And I'm going to welcome on board Jonathan Barratt and ask him about what he's making on crude prices. Jonathan, hi, morning. Great to have you on the show. Jonathan, this kind of volatility, and surely so, because of the developments in West Asia and all that Trump has to say, escalated tensions once again. But very swiftly from day before, we're back at almost closing in on $80 to a barrel on Brent. Where do you see the very near-term prices headed?
Look, it has been quite volatile. At the end of the day, it's really up to President Trump and Iran to try and get back to the table, to try and work out how this ceasefire will actually work. I think it's a lot of bluff from Trump's point of view, where he's actually turning around saying it's over. But I do think that if Iran comes to the table quickly, I think Trump will also. As a result of that, we've seen oil obviously have this radical rise, near $10 rise.
Jonathan, do you think crude will be, in a range there now around $80 or so, or you are expected to escalate back to 100 if nothing happens at this point in time? Because President Trump is talking about ending of a ceasefire, but he also doesn't want to restart a war.
That is absolutely 100%. That's why I think it's relatively temporary, the spike that we're actually seeing. If you would say, okay, 80, maybe 85, but, Trump has sort of been very hard on one side, but also very quick to actually come to the table very quickly. So I think at the end of the day, sort of this is just an interim spike whilst both parties actually try and sort out where they're going. Iran is playing a very hard bargain. And that's frustrating the US in its efforts. So it's pulled back now. So I think it's really up to Iran to come back. Hopefully we don't get through that 85 because we know it's oil at 85 or even higher is going to be harmful for the global economy, particularly when the global economy is actually slowing as well.
Jonathan, if at all this were to prolong, what's the downside risk to crude? I'm trying to understand that.
Look, I think that's a really interesting thing because when you do look at the downside, we all of a sudden had this supply oversupply because the global economy is slow and we see this oversupply actually happening. If the oversupply then do we go back to sub 70? I think the market was in balance at around that US 70 before, and I'd like to see us back into that range. But if the global economies start to come back, and we've got some very important numbers coming up out of the US and out of China, that'll give us a lead. But if the global economy is starting to come down, well, then that will put more supply. We've also got OPEC increasing, Aramco increasing, so there's oil all ready to go into the market. So I think that will also placate too much of a significant price rise from here.
Okay. And Jonathan, on the downside, if at all things were to improve fairly quickly or on the upside with regard to crude, how quickly can crude come back off and where would it stabilize at if there is a quick resolution to everything that's playing out?
I think the good thing is that the good thing about looking at where crude is, it is in a range, and we can see that 70 is very important for everyone. I think traders will start to short the market if it breaks through 70 because that is now very good support. And we know that resistance is up around that 85. So if I look at that range there, it's a little bit wide, but I think 85 on the top side, and I think I'd be a better seller up there, providing sort of the macros work with it. But certainly if 70 goes on the downside, then I think you'll supply that and then you'll see more players actually coming to sell. Remember, Aramco the other day discounted its price to get sales through the door. So I do think that those suppliers really want to get sales. So around these levels, but I do think that range is pretty much 70 to 85.
Jonathan, so good chatting with you, and I'm sure we're going to be chatting a lot more given the volatility in crude and what's happening in West Asia once again.